gonna be honest, I didn't realize that these were nearly $1,000 because we bought these a couple months ago for this video. I thought it was like $200 or $300, and then we started getting ready for this video. I'm like, we spent $825 on this shoe for this video. So fingers crossed this video does well, because this is up there with the most expensive shoes and probably the more basic shoes we've ever done, especially after doing some of these other knit upper with foam outsole, midsole shoes. And so we're gonna try to figure out, is there anything on the inside of this shoe that really makes it worth $825, or is it just this little Balenciaga logo on the shoe that makes it worth $825? Because we've cut apart their Crocs collab they did, but that was kind of a meme in and of itself, and so we kind of gave it a pass. But these are not nearly as much of a meme, so we're gonna try to figure out if Balenciaga is bullshit. And thanks to Extra Wallets for sponsoring this video. So what makes Extra Wallets different? Let me show you. Watch this. Easy access to your cards with just one little click of this little button on the bottom. Fans out your cards so you can easily grab the whole stack, or even kind of filter through them to find that one card you're looking for. And they have built-in RFID blocking that basically protects your wallet from all those scammers that all they do is take a little card reader and put it up next to your wallet, and it'll read your little microchip on it. That little RFID blocking protects you from having that happen to you. And one thing that completely blew me away is they have a solar powered tracking device that allows you to track your wallet's location from your smartphone, and it's solar powered. Isn't that crazy? And when you lose your wallet with this in it, you activate it, it just makes a little ringing noise, and you can hear it wherever it's lost, and you can actually pinpoint it instead of just having a general location of where it's at. And the really cool thing is 2 hours in the sun equals to about 3 months of a charge. And they have a few different options. They've got a leather option, and they have an aluminum option, which is pretty cool. And it's the space grade 6061 T6 aluminum, and it has this expandable aluminum plate on the back. So if you run out of space on your little clicky bit, you can shove more cards in there and fit more cards, and really dial in this wallet exactly how you want. And if you're really particular with colors, they have 14 different color options to choose from. So if you're interested in an extra wallet, be sure to check out the links in my description and use the code ROSEANVIL. So check them out below, and thanks again to Extra for sponsoring this video. Now let's go over a quick history of Balenciaga, and I honestly have screwed up the name so much on purpose in that Crocs video. Is Balenciaga, Crocs, and Balenciaga, or Balenciaga. There's a good chance I'm gonna screw it up a few times in this video. And it all started in 1895 when Mr. Balenciaga himself was born in the Basque region of Spain. And then by 1917, he opened up his first couture house in San Sebastian, Spain. And if you think I'm screwing these words up, get used to it, because it's gonna be through the whole history lesson. And then 1937, he opened his first house in Paris, met with success by buyers and critics, and he had to move out of Spain due to the Spanish Civil War. And then 1947, he creates his first Balenciaga perfume. And then throughout the 1950s, Balenciaga really set themselves apart from the other fashion houses because of the craftsmanship and the way they built their products. In 1968, he presents his very last line and retires to Spain. And then unfortunately in 1972, Mr. Balenciaga dies. But that wasn't the end of the brand, it wasn't the end of the name, because in the 90s, Balenciaga really experienced a renaissance in fashion. And then in 2001, Kering acquires Balenciaga House, who currently owns all these brands, pretty big name brands. And then 2018, they named it their fastest growing brand. And then fast forward to present time, 2022, they are still a big name in the industry, and they're still coming out the wildest, weirdest collabs, and Kanye's wearing their stuff, and you can't tell if it's from a thrift store, if it's from Balenciaga. And that's the over 100-year history of Balenciaga. And I like doing these little histories because it really gives you the context you need to appreciate some of these brands that maybe you've never heard of, or you have heard of and you don't really understand the full history. So now let's start going through this shoe and try to figure out if it is actually worth $825. We all know it's not, but we'll see if there's anything in here that makes it closer to $825 versus the previous shoes that we've cut apart that are the knit upper with the foam and rubber outsoles. So starting with the upper first. So this is a recycled polyester knit upper. It's 92% polyester, 8% elastic, so you can have some stretch in there. And they call it their 3D knit, which is probably sewn on a flatbed like we've seen before, and then sewn together right here at the heel, because that's the only seam on this entire shoe, which is part of why this silhouette is so interesting, is because it's just a very basic slim silhouette. And we've seen a similar upper in the Yeezy 350s, the Ultra Boost 22s, the Zoom X, and all those shoes really lean into the fact that the upper is really breathable and flexible. So we put this on our breathability tester, and as you can see, it really performed pretty well, especially compared to the other shoes that we've tested. This 3D knit upper is really breathable. Like if you look at how the Adidas did, the Nikes did, the 350s, Definitely one of the more breathable shoes. And this upper is made in the same way a sock is made because it's a weft knit fabric. So it doesn't have that same pattern and strength that you get from a warp knit. So we wanted to do that same test we did on the 350s where we cut a vertical line and a horizontal line to see how much it comes unraveled. And as you can see, it did come unraveled, but not nearly as easily as the 350s. And I think part of that is because of maybe this 360 knit where it is quite a thick single layer of knit material. You know, it's not doubled up, but it is fairly thick. So I think you have just a little bit more unraveling protection than the Yeezy 350s, but just to double check and see if we can draw any conclusions, we wanted to put this on our microscope camera to really compare the two fabrics and how they're structured and how they're weaved. And if you look really, really closely, they're basically the exact same thing. And so I'm not sure why this shoe didn't unravel and the 350s did. Maybe the actual threads themselves are a lot smaller than the 350s, so it takes more to actually get it unraveled. But it still is definitely very sock-like and comfortable, unless you have really dainty lady ankles like me, and then this just accentuates your ankle and you just look like you got flippers on when you're walking around. But the upper isn't even really the interesting aspect of this. To me, the interesting thing is the midsole and the outsole. So we'll start with the midsole first. So this is their ultra articulated molded sole, and the previous version didn't have these cutouts. And I love the cutouts here. I think it's so cool how easily it bends, and like the whole articulation aspect of it as you walk, it articulates for you. Doesn't actually add any benefit at all. Maybe a little bit in the flexibility, but other than that, not really. It's mostly for looks, but it is still a really fun feature of this shoe that it articulates so easily. And just like the upper, this midsole is made from a recycled foam. And if you look really closely between the layers, there's almost like a plastic plate running all the way through the sole of the shoe, very similar to the Ons and how they have that plate in there to give you a little bit more spring back when you're running. This one obviously doesn't have nearly as much spring, and I think more than anything that plate's in there just to stabilize these independent pieces when they're moving around. And as for the density and the hardness of this foam, it's a really tough foam. It comes in at a 60 Shore A, and to put that in perspective, the Yeezy 350s were around 20, the Zoom X was 30 to 35, the Ultra Boosts were 25 to 30, so the Balenciaga foam is twice as hard as the previous foams we've tested. And so because of that, we wanted to run the bearing drop test to see if we could draw some conclusions as to why maybe they did such a hard foam. And if you don't remember, here's the info from the previous one. So the Zoom X did 23.5 and 30. The Ultra Boost did 20 and 25. The Hoka's did 17.6 and 17.4. The Ons did 13.3, and the Zoom X unit did 26.8 for our like high mark. And as for how these did, you might be surprised. We rigged it up, we dropped it, and the thing just died on the foam. You know, we cut the slab first, and it only bounced up 7.3 inches. And then we did the whole heel cross section, hoping that maybe it'd bounce up higher. It only bounced up 9.3 inches. So less than half than the previous knit running shoes. And to put that in perspective, it did even worse than the Converse did, which is our like bottom line control, because the Converse did 7.8 and 11.8. So somehow these $850 shoes are harder than your pair of Converse. And a 60 Shore A is right up close to what we see in a lot of outsoles. Like these Vibram outsoles that we're testing on boots, those are usually like 70 to 75 Shore A. So the midsole of this shoe is nearly as dense and hard as most outsoles on shoes. And we wanted to see how this foam was structured on the microscopic level, even though it's not microscopic. We have a microscopic lens, so we could see how the different foams are structured and how they compare to each other. So we did the Zoom X, we did the Boost foam, and then the Balenciaga foam. And you can see there is a very big difference between the three foams. And I think a lot of what makes this so dense and so heavy isn't even necessarily how much air is infused into it, but the actual compound itself is a really heavy, almost rubber compound. And so we wanted to do a burn test as well, just to see how it reacted, and we burnt the midsole, and it acted just like rubber. It didn't act like the previous foams where they kind of disintegrate. This melted a lot more like a rubber outsole. So with this plate running underneath of your foot, and with how hard the midsole is, these shoes I don't think are really as comfortable as people are hoping and saying they are, because underfoot they still feel really hard, because you're not even standing on foam, you're standing on the insole with that hard layer underneath. So we're starting to see that this shoe is a lot more about the name and the look over anything else. So how hard is this outsole? Well, this outsole, once again, is super hard. It's 77 to 80 Shore A, which is right up there with the work boot, even a little bit harder than some of the work boots we've cut apart. And as for how this whole sole unit is connected, I believe it's just cemented on there. I don't think it's direct injected, because you can see a little bit of the glue along the sides here. Other than that, that's basically all the components, and you can see on the inside it is strobo stitched like a lot of other sneakers, but that's about it. So not a whole lot pointing to these being a higher quality shoe than anything that we've reviewed in this similar category. So now let's cut it in half. Maybe there's something hiding in the inside. Maybe a golden nugget worth a few $100s. Who knows? Let's get them cut in half. All right, we got it cut in half, and also it's completely destroyed on this one side, so we'll just ignore this side and focus on this side. So let's see what's inside. Maybe if I can get it. So just as we expected, they got that really thick, almost shank running the full length of the shoe to stabilize this wild outsole. But even still, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of flexing and very specific spots on this little shank. So I'd be concerned if I really wore these for a really long time that eventually that shank would get work hardened. You know, like when you bend a wire over and over, it heats up, those molecules align and the wire snaps. I'd be worried about the same thing happening with this, because that does happen with plastic. And you can see it is more than just a knit upper. You've got a reinforcing layer of lining all the way around the shoe, which I do like, because part of what I hate about these shoes is when you can see like people's feet and toes outlined. I don't know, it just kind of grosses me out, to be honest, but I like the organic shape. I just don't want to see the shape of your toes. So I like that little aspect of it. I think it rounds it off and makes it a little bit better looking. And it kind of looks like a suede material, but I'd be willing to bet it's not. It's probably just some sort of felt. Let's see how this smells when we burn it, because usually you can clearly smell the burning flesh of leather. Also, you can always tell, see how it's melted like that? That's leather doesn't melt. And it doesn't smell like plastic when you burn it. So that's not a leather lining, not that they ever would claim that, but it does kind of have like that suede leather look. And now you can really see what I mean by these not being that comfortable, because you're just standing on that little bit of the foam for the insole, which is not a great insole. And you got this little felted layer from the slip lasting, and then you're right on top of that hard plate. At least with the ons, you have such soft foam underneath, and it's structured in a way that it collapses, that you get that feeling of comfort underneath your foot, and it absorbs the shock of your step. This is not going to do that for you because it's so hard. So now that we've got it cut in half, our Balenciagas BS, I would say pretty clearly you're not paying for any type of material science, any type of quality of materials or durability or comfort. You're strictly paying for the Balenciaga name and the silhouette. It's just another example of designer brands just arbitrarily choosing a price and hoping that people are gonna pay for it, and people do. So to me, these are pretty clearly BS, and so far everything we've seen from Balenciaga is pretty clearly BS as well, which is a bummer, because they built the brand on doing this with the unique silhouettes and everything that's high fashion, and combining it with the quality of materials and the quality of product that you buy, and they've completely disregarded that and no longer make quality products as far as we've seen. And I hate when brands completely disregard their heritage and their history just to make a little bit extra profit. So let me know what you guys think, and if you have a pair of these, let me know your experience in them. Maybe I'm completely off. Maybe they are the best shoes ever, but I highly doubt it. So thank you guys for everything you do, and don't forget the Whites collab, September 18th. It's probably gonna go pretty quick, so sign up to the limited edition email list so you get early access, because I love those boots and the little knife pouch, the little hidden pocket on the inside. They're awesome. So thank you guys. See ya.